All right, let's talk about a tiny little line of code that honestly changed JavaScript forever. Use strict. Now, it might not look like much, but its story, well, its story reveals this massive challenge at the very heart of how programming languages grow and change. I mean, seriously, just think about that for a second. What if every single error, every less than perfect decision you ever made was just permanent? It sounds like a total nightmare, right? Well, for a long time, that was the reality for the people creating JavaScript. And this right here is the core of the problem. On the one hand, JavaScript had this incredible promise, backwards compatibility. You could keep adding whole new features, but the old stuff would never change, which meant old websites wouldn't just suddenly break. Awesome. But the downside, whoa, it was a big one. Any mistake, any weird quirk from the early days was stuck in the language forever. So here's our game plan for this explainer. First, we're going to dig into that unfixable past. Then we'll look at the super clever solution he came up with. After that, we'll break down the rules for this modern mode, ask the big question, is it even still needed? And then wrap it all up with your final takeaway. Okay, first up, let's really get our heads around this problem. How in the world do you evolve a language that the entire internet pretty much depends on without, breaking the entire internet? Think about it like this. Imagine you're building a city. You can add shiny new skyscrapers, amazing parks, whatever you want. But that leaky, weird looking building from 1995, yeah, you can't fix it. You can't tear it down. You just have to build around it forever. That's exactly what JavaScript developers were dealing with. But then a really brilliant compromise came along. This brings us to the solution that finally let developers start fixing those old leaky buildings without causing the whole city to crumble. The big turning point was the year 2009. Before then, as we said, mistakes were permanent. But with the arrival of ES5, everything changed. It introduced this amazing idea, a new, totally optional modern mode that developers could choose to switch on. And that modern mode gets activated by this special little phrase, use strict. Now, this isn't a function or a variable, it's just a string that acts like a light switch. For example, in old JavaScript, if you accidentally misspelled a variable name, it would silently create a new global variable, a classic way to create nasty bugs. In strict mode, nope. It throws an error immediately. It turns those silent, sneaky bugs into loud, obvious ones. And this is it. This is the magic phrase. Use strict followed by a semicolon. That's the key. That's the signal you send to the browser that says, hey, for this piece of code, let's do things the right way, the modern way. Okay, so we know what it is. Now let's get into the nitty gritty. What are the actual rules for using it? What do you need to know? All right, rule number one, and this is the big one. It is non-negotiable. The use strict directive has to be the very, very first thing in your script. The only thing you can have before it are comments. If any real code comes before it, the browser just shrugs, ignores it, and strict mode never turns on. So that kind of begs the question, right? If you can turn it on, can you just turn it off again? What if you want to go back to the old quirky way halfway through your code? And the answer is a hard no, a big no. There is no use strict. Once you opt into modern mode for a script or a function, that's it. You're in. There's no going back. It is a one-way ticket. And hey, here's a little pro tip for you, especially if you like to play around in the browser's developer console. By default, the console does not run in strict mode. If you want to turn it on, just type use strict. Then, and here's the trick, hold down Shift and press Enter. That gives you an inline. Then you can write all your code and run the whole thing in modern mode. So all of this leads us to the million-dollar question for us developers today. Is use strict even something we need to worry about anymore? Let me just ask you directly, when you open up a new JavaScript file today, should your first move be to type use strict right at the very top? Well, the thing is, modern JavaScript has kind of started doing the work for us. Today, if you're using advanced structures like classes or JavaScript modules, and let's be honest, you probably are, they enable strict mode automatically. It's built right in. You get all the safety and benefits of modern mode for free without having to type a single thing. So let's bring it all home. Let's distill all of this down into one simple, clear piece of advice for the code you're writing today. Here is the absolute best way to think about it. For now, think of useStrict as a welcome guest at the top of your scripts. It's a good habit. It ensures you're playing by the modern rules. But as your code evolves and you start structuring everything inside modern classes and modules, well, you'll find you don't need to invite that guest anymore. Why? Because modern mode is already part of the house rules. So that's the story of useStrict, a clever little hack that became a bridge from JavaScript's past to its future. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other invisible rules or old decisions from way back when are still quietly shaping the code we write and the technology we use every single day?